Hello, everyone. Welcome to Buzzer Beaters, an NBA podcast that's brought to you by grumblingsmedia.com. This is your first time watching. Twan and I, my co-host Anthony Twan Corral here, and I go over basketball topics, mainly on the NBA front, but we kind of dibble and dabble in the NCAA when it's applicable, as well as the WNBA when it's applicable. But for the most part, we're just going to focus on the NBA. What we typically do is we pick like 1 to 4 topics depending on what's going on, and with the intent of spending about an hour on the show. For this week, we're going to go ahead and cover the Summer League, the rest of the Summer League games that happened, because the last episode of last week, we covered essentially the first weekend of the Summer League, along with the California Classic and the Utah Summer League as well. So we covered those games. We covered some of the players that stood out for us. And then now we're going to go ahead and cover the games from July 15th to the championship game of July 22nd. So that's what we're going to go ahead and talk about. And also, one thing you also notice is that we did change the date. We are now going to be on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific, every other Wednesday now, because the NBA is essentially over now after the Summer League. And then, of course, we're going to cover the Team USA at the next podcast that we have in a couple of weeks. And we're probably going to have a guest as well that's going to join us to talk about WNBA, because I know that's pretty hot right now with the emergence of Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and others, right, that are just Asia Wilson, who's just dominating right now. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. But for the most part, we're going to focus on the Team USA and how they're doing once the Olympics are over. Again, we'll just kind of dibble and dabble and determine what makes sense to have as a podcast. So again, Wednesdays, 6 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. That's when we're going to have these. And we're doing these live because we want to hear from you. We want to get your questions. We want to get your comments. We've been getting some of those, great, but we'd like to have more. All right. So anyway, Twan, we're going to go ahead and talk about the Summer League, the games that just took place from the Monday before last, because this last Monday was the championship game that featured the Miami Heat and the Memphis Grizzlies. But we're going to go ahead and talk about those games that spanned up to the championship game. So I kind of wanted to get, per like we did last week, we talked about some of the players that stood out, right? The guys that, when you look at the game, really stand out. You're like, okay, this guy's NBA ready, the eye test, right? And then I'm going to supplement that with some of the data, from a fantasy sports related standpoint. I look at the stats and kind of weigh the player's value based on the stats they accumulate. So we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about this to cover both sides, because the audience is probably split in how they look at games, because there's a lot of fantasy basketball players out there and FanDuel and DraftKings players. But you looked at it from the eye test, so definitely wanted to kind of get your take as the games that you watched, and then some of the guys that stood out, and just kind of take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I did watch a bevy of games. The one thing that I want to start off with there were a lot of bad games. Right. So I don't want to beat up on the guys, but there were a lot of bad games. I'm looking for a needle in a haystack here at some points. I went in to the show hoping that I could focus on some of the rookies or some of the key players, right, some of the people that we had talked about in our draft shows and things of that nature. But for various reasons, they were sitting out, or they weren't playing, or whatever. They were injured, or they were on rotation. So I just found myself just looking overall at all the players. So the players that I'm going to bring up can be second-year players. There's some third-year players. I think there's some even a player or two that are beyond third-year players. So I kind of want to focus on that. So I wanted to go down some of the games that I watched, some of the things that I highlighted. I want to start off with the Memphis Grizzlies. So I talked about them last week, and I watched them again. And this Scotty Pippen Jr., he's really, really impressing me. He's, take all of what I'm saying with a grain of salt. Obviously, Scotty Pippen Jr. is playing with, I would say, a notch below NBA caliber players at this point. Right. Most of the players are still trying to learn the league and come up and get there. So, but he is dominating, and on all levels. I mean, he's playing solid defense. I mean, he's not a big guy. He's about 6'3". I'm going to guess about 180 pounds or so, somewhere in that range. Really good passer, really aggressive player. I've been watching some other point guards. They kind of turn into black holes. They run the ball up the court and then they end up shooting or looking for their offense. Scotty Pippen is not that type of guy. He's really
he's definitely focusing on distributing and playing defense, which is what he should be doing. I mean, he's been in the league for a few years, so he knows what these NBA GMs are looking for, right? So, you probably already know this, but a lot of these guys, and we talked about this last week, a lot of these guys who come to play the summer league that are not initially drafted by the team, a lot of these guys are coming out there to try and get jobs, right? From any team that's willing to look at them. And that's why you get some of these guys trying to like do their best and doing what they think that they're best at, and not necessarily what the GMs want them to do. And Scotty is one of those guys who knows what these guys want, what they need and look for, right? But he's already with the Memphis Grizzlies anyway. But yeah, go ahead. I just wanted to
So what's funny is, as I'm watching all of this, I'm seeing Vin Baker Jr., Jameer Nelson Jr., Scotty Pippen Jr. There's a lot of juniors out there that I didn't even realize were in the league. So it was kind of fun watching all of these players. But from that game, he really stood out. Everyone else, with the exception of G.G. Jackson, he's a pretty good player, bigger player, has a nice three. I liked watching him as well. He didn't stand out as much to me as Scotty Pippen Jr. did. But what really stood out is Dallas was just in that game was not looking very good at all. I mean, I just didn't think they were even worth noting. So that was one of the first games that I watched. Some of the other games, and I'll kind of jump around here a little bit on my notes. The next guy that I do want to talk about, I want to talk about the Bulls-Pistons game because Buzelis, holy crap.
Oh yeah, that kid's got he's got some swag, man.
Eddie, I think this kid's gonna. I mean, if he doesn't start within the first month, I'm gonna be surprised, especially given the Bulls' talent and where they're at. But this kid,
they're in transition.
He can ball. I mean, he's got swag to him.
Yep.
He's a cocky kid, but not overly cocky. He moves really smooth. Is even when he's aggressive to the hoop, he does it kind of in a side-to-side fashion. So he's not the kind of guy that's going to pull a lot of charges or kind of do that kind of foul. He's got a real smooth three. Boy, I really like this kid. I know last week I talked about Holland and Dillingham and a couple of other guys. This guy, I was like, man, I should have drafted this dude because this dude was freaking fantastic. I thought
he's a player, man. I was watching him too. I mean, again, the eye test shows you who belongs, right? Yeah. Who stands out amongst the crowd. That's essentially what you're looking for, and he definitely stands out amongst the crowd for sure. I mean, he's cocky enough to think that he should have been drafted higher. He was like, man, I should have been a number one pick, right? What is everybody else thinking? But I like this kid's swag, man, and he's not overly cocky to kind of piss you off. He's kind of more on the Anthony Edwards front a little bit. Anthony Edwards cocky,
his
friendly.
His face is a little sheepish, He kind of looks at you kind of
Yeah. He's got that new hairdo, right? The Messi dude, right?
He's not overbearing. I really liked him. I mean, he had good hesitation moves. I saw a couple of Euro steps on his game. He could easily get around big players. He could easily shoot over the shorter players. He has really quick hands on D, kept poking things out of, on defense, kept poking balls out. And what was really interesting about this game, which I highlighted this game to me, was because he went up against Holland, right? Ron Holland, which last week I had mentioned. And you could see Ron Holland trying to take it up a notch and couldn't quite get there. He was struggling a little bit. And this kid Buzelis was just he wasn't even paying him no mind. Let's go.
Right.
I'll go around you if he's on D. So I really, really liked him. Another one on the Bulls was Sonaga.
Sonogo, Adem Sonogo. Sonogo, the guy from UConn.
Correct, from UConn. Yeah, good defensive player. Had good blocking presence. Had good low post game. So I really liked him. And then DJ Stewart as well. Nice mid range. Was attacking the rim. Really, really liked him. Let's see here. Jumping around some more here.
Let me ask you this: out of the games that you just mentioned, were there any guys that we're talking about top performers? Was there anybody you're going, oh my god, this guy really needs help? If anybody at all, if anybody,
I tried to be honest with you as I was watching. Yes, there was players, but I didn't jot them down because I didn't jot them down. Right. I didn't want to bash people. I didn't. But there was, and that's what when I was saying there was a lot of boring games. There was just a lot of players that.
This is pickup game, man. A lot of people are playing pickup game.
Well, it's not only that. It's clear. There's a couple of ways that I'm drawing this line. The first player, the first level that I look at the player is this player understanding the team concept, or are they just trying to get theirs?
Right.
So that was kind of the first division that I would draw.
And I would say most of them don't
someone
understand the team concept. Most of them want to shine, right? They want to shine.
Correct, they don't. But when I look at maybe a player that throws a pass in the lane and no one's there, but you kind of see their intent, like you were hoping someone would cut.
Right.
To me, I'm like, all right, I look at that player and I go, okay, that player understands that it's not just about them. They're trying to include. And then you got the players that are all about themselves, right? Yep. The minute they get the ball, they're putting their head down and they're attacking. And there's the ones that can get away with it a little bit, and then there's the ones that are just keep missing and missing and missing. Number 12 for the San Antonio Spurs, I don't remember his name. He runs the point guard. He's got like a little triangle ball spot, kind of. I don't remember his name.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, that dude would put his head down and go time and time and time again. And I'm watching this kid and I'm going, yo, bro, give it up. Like, just pass the ball, move it around, like. So no, I didn't pick on anybody like that.
Okay. Just keep going on guys that stood out for you so far.
Yeah. The other game that I watched, the other game that I wanted to talk about, which I didn't watch the whole thing, but I watched the first half, was the Wizards-Blazers game. That's the one where Klingon kind of quote unquote owned Alex Sarr. Last week when I watched, and I have my notes, I don't remember who Sarr was playing, and I said he was invisible.
Yeah, he is though. He is.
Well, this game though, Eddie, I will tell you, I think he was like 0 for 15 in this game. He had
12. I remember that game. Yeah.
He had a rough day, but I saw more out of him. Like, he looked more comfortable. The thing about it, the first game, I thought he was kind of skinny, but then when I took a look at him, he's kind of built from the waist down. He's kind of a thick-legged guy from the waist down, and he seemed to be more involved. I liked, even though the scores didn't represent, I think defensively he had a better game. He had more rebounds, he had some block shots. Offensively, he was like a no-show. But I actually thought he was significantly better this game than he was the last game. Even though Klingon, quote-unquote, owned him, I thought that I liked the way he was looking in this game. Is he a starter right now in the league? No.
And that's what we're looking for, are guys that you think could be starters. And that's good. That's a good observation, because I didn't think Alex Sarr, being the number 2 pick, I thought he would shine way more than he did. Yeah. And he actually just looks kind of like, I don't know, man, like he just kind of is trying to find himself out there a little bit, He's definitely going to get dominated by a Donovan Klingon type, or even a Zach Edey type, the guys that are bigger and stronger than him. He should be able to use his agility to be able to get around those guys. But he definitely has it. Like I said before in the last week's show, a lot of these GMs think that guy has the most star quality in this draft. And I would say that a lot of these GMs who probably watched the summer league were probably disappointed that this guy didn't really shine amongst a lot of these guys that are not even that good, right? So
I would agree. I would say in this Wizards-Blazers game, I could see, how would I put this? I could see the moves he has where someone would think he was a star. I'm less confident that he would be, but he's got the moves. He's got the shots. The shots that he took weren't incredibly hard. He was just off. And so I'm thinking as he gets more comfortable, I can see him becoming better. But, I'm going to say that a lot of the big men, Filipowski, right, is another one. I was watching the Utah game. Filipowski he's a decent player, man. I mean,
definitely from where he started and where he started coming at the end of the summer league, he definitely started really slow and actually started picking it up. Yes, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, and given where he was drafted against Edey or Klingon, I don't see that much of a drop off. To be honest with you, I mean, because offensively he's a little better than Klingon, right? Klingon probably significantly more better than him in defense.
Yes.
But I can see them kind of off balancing, and I'm like thinking, well, if you pick that guy up late in the draft, second round pick, like that's not a bad deal.
He shouldn't have slipped that far though. He should have been somewhere in the top.
The one that I watched 2 games with was the kid from is it Cody Williams?
Williams. The Utah kid, Colorado.
Yeah. That kid looks lost, Eddie.
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I agree with you on that. That's Jalen Williams is the younger brother, and Jalen Williams of the OKC Thunder. Yeah, and I agree with you, man. For being I think he was a 10th pick. I thought, let's put it this way, man. The guys that are top 10 picks should be standing out, man. And I was disappointed that the only one, in my opinion, the only 2 that really stood out, in my opinion, from what I saw, was Reed Shepherd. Reed Shepherd stood out big time, man. And then Rob Dillingham. another guy who really stood out. And of course, these guys are both on your freaking drafted teams. Kicking my butt, which I will go ahead and review at the end. But yeah, those guys stood out. And believe it or not, Klingon, I think, stood out from a defensive standpoint, right? I mean, and then Zach Edey, when he got the time, he looked pretty good as well. So those are the top 7. Actually, those are the top 9 picks. 4 of the top 9 picks that I mentioned. Those are the guys that I felt looked like they belonged. Another guy that I thought looked like he belonged was Jalen Tyson.
Yes.
Jalen Tyson looks like a freaking player, man.
Yeah, I stole Khalil Ware from him, and you stole him from me.
Yeah, and then Ron Holland looks like a player. So all of these guys that we're talking, these guys, they're going to be rotational pieces right from the jump, in my opinion. Correct. Maybe some of them might even be starters. Matas Vaselis, right? He's another guy that is probably going to start as well.
And who else is going to start? Again, a lot of this is needs, right? But Edey's start. Zach Edey's going to start for Memphis.
He's going to start.
Need a center. They need a big. Whether or not we could argue he's better than Klingon or some of these other players, time will tell. But he's going to start because the opportunity is there. Klingon's got to go up against the kid from Phoenix up at the center, right? And so he may or may not start depending on what Portland wants to do.
Right. Oh, are you talking about the Yusuf Nurkic guy from?
No. The center they traded. Man, I'm getting old man disease again.
I hear you.
The center over in Portland. The one that came from Phoenix on the Phoenix trade.
Oh yeah, I don't remember. All I know is Yusuf Nurkic.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm sure if there's anybody out there on comment land,
By the way, we're live. So for those of you who are listening in, if you have any questions, this is why we're live, so we can go ahead and hear from you, right? So please feel free to go ahead and put some comments on your platform. Any questions, comments, we're more than happy to address. So go ahead, Tom.
Yeah. So kind of talking about that Jazz game we were talking about. Another guy that stood out. I don't know if I don't think he's a first-year player, but Javon Freeman Liberty from the
he played for the Raptors last year. I think he's a second or third year player. I don't think.
Yeah, he's on the Pelicans now. Yep. So I actually liked him quite a bit. He was quite aggressive. He had a little bit of a black hole mentality, right? Like once he had the ball, he wasn't going to let it go. But he was converting, and he had a couple of. He was getting some steals. He was getting some rebounds. Same for Jamal Sheed.
Jamal Sheed, from Houston.
Yeah.
Houston Cougar.
Good.
I like him too, man. Yeah. I'm surprised. I knew a lot of people had him undrafted, and I'm glad he got drafted because I thought, in my opinion, for that Houston team that, I think could have gone pretty far if he had not gotten hurt. I thought he was one of the guys that really was looking good to me that could go pro. Although it's his size is, something of concern, right? But from an offensive standpoint, explosive standpoint, he's very similar to a Dillingham kind of. But I think he's more of a combination. He might be more of like an Isaiah Collier type. The guy who's just big and kind of stocky, strong, drive to the bucket, kind of dish. That's the type of player I think Jamal Sheed is.
Correct.
Yeah.
The other one that I noticed from the Jazz was Taylor Hendricks.
He's been in the league already. He's been in the league for a couple years now.
Pretty good rebounder, runs the floor, has got a nice shot, kind of, I don't want to say a 3-and-D guy, but more along those kind of lines. He was pretty good. Let's see, I watched the Knicks-Nets game. I heard a lot of talk about Tyler Kolek, at least in that game.
Yeah.
He broke down the D a little bit. He had some assists. He was pretty good, but, I wasn't like, the buzz was like, all right, he's okay. At least in that game. I want to be clear, at least in the Nets game.
Yeah, but I would say that if you look at some of the guys in that game, he probably stood out more than others, right?
Correct. Yeah.
So relative to his competition, he looked better than others, right? So he played for Marquette, was in the tournament, and you could see that this kid was going to be a player in the NBA, but we just don't know what kind of a player right now, because defensively he is a liability, and that's what a lot of these guys that like a Dalton Connect, right? He has the size, but he doesn't have necessarily the athleticism to stay with a real athletic offensive player. And that's why, that's the knock on some of these guys is that, do they have the athleticism to be able to compete on the defensive standpoint? And that's Tyler Kolek's, unfortunately his liability. And I don't know if he's going to be able to gain that. I don't know. But that's why, I think he might become a rotational piece. But the Knicks are freaking, they're pretty stacked.
They're stacked.
Yeah, I don't think he's probably going to be a bench warmer for this year. So, yeah.
And I watched Obi Toppin's little brother, Jacob Toppin.
Jacob Toppin. Yep.
He was okay. nothing to write home about. Let me see here. Anybody else that stood out? I know you like TJ Shannon. You've been talking about
Terrence Shannon.
Yeah, Terrence Shannon. Yeah.
Yep.
I watched 2 games with him, and in both games, I thought he was just okay.
He played good in the first game, and then after that, he kind of disappeared, and then he had like a toe injury, and then never played ever since. So that pick in the draft, that he was my second pick, by the way. That screwed me. That's because he didn't play. He only played 1 game, and then he played 2 games. In the second game, he didn't do jack in like 7 or 8 minutes, and after that, he didn't play. After that, so I got screwed. But the guy is a really big time scorer, man. He's a guy that I forgot what school he went to, but anyway, he was considered one of the better scorers in this draft. So that's
kind of what I was expecting out of him, and he is an aggressive scorer, but it was the scoring he was doing. I give less points if it's like a breakaway or something that's an easy kind of scoring opportunity
that you work for and you make it. That's when it's
opposed to a shot that you created on yourself. So he was getting more of those opportunistic plays, less so much creating his own offense. Adem Bona for the Sixers, I liked him. He was good.
Very defensive kind of guy, man.
Yeah,
very defensive guy.
Yep, I liked him. I'm trying to remember who's the backup center there. They picked up Drummond, didn't they?
Drummond. Yep, he's backing up Joel Embiid.
Yep, Joel Embiid. So, and then Jared McCain, I watched him a little bit. He's got a nice 3 shot.
He does have a good shot. I agree with you.
So, liked him there.
He's going to play. I mean, he's going to be a rotational piece on that team just because they need shooters, right? And the Knicks have, a Dante DiVincenzo who can shoot, a Jalen Brunson. I wouldn't call him a shooter per se, but he has the capability.
He's a scorer.
He's a scorer, right? He's not really an outside shooter, right? And a Jared McCain is a shooter just like a Dante DiVincenzo is, and that's what they need more of to spread the floor so that Jalen Brunson can do his work when he drives to the bucket and dishes off to Randall or whoever else, right, is going to be there. So so
cool. Let me see. Watched a little bit of Missy.
He's Missy.
Yeah, he was
Baylor
okay.
guy.
He was okay. Nothing really. I noticed Riley Minix. He had a pretty good looking shot, pretty good looking 3. I observed him a little bit. Jacoby Walter. I watched the Walters game. The Raptors.
Yeah, man. Another guy was lost, man. He looks lost.
There was nothing out of him, Eddie. I kept watching him, and I kept going.
Agree, man.
He's going to do something. Yeah.
That's the thing. That's what's concerning for this draft class is there weren't that many that really stood out. I mentioned 4 or 5 of them. That really stood out. Other than that, man, it's like you can argue like the top 3 picks. Or top 4 picks, any of those guys could have been the number 1 pick, right? Because it's just not like a big difference between the guy at the top from the top, from the top to the maybe the 6th person in that draft or 7th person. There's not a big discrepancy, and and that's what you're looking for in these games. Is okay. A lot of these GMs want to see how these players are performing against other players that have been playing in the NBA because there's been guys, Kevin Knox, who played for the Warriors. He's been in the league for 7 years, and he's still in the summer league, man. He's playing summer league ball. That gives you an idea of like a lot of these guys out there. They're some of these guys are not just 1 year or 2nd year players. There's guys out there who are trying to vie for a job, for like
Correct.
4, 5, 6 year players, right? So a lot of these GMs want to see how these rookies measure up to guys like that, right? And when they don't really stand out, they're kind of going, crap.
Well, and that's what I want. That's kind of what I'm noting, guys like Scotty Pippen Jr. and Knox and some of these players that have been around a couple of years. They're the ones that were really kind of shining bright. A lot of the rookie class, So Jacoby Walter, like I said, he was another one. I watched a little bit of the Wizards King game. I was looking for Bub Carrington to see if he would do anything. He was pretty quiet in that game.
I think he looks like a decent player, though. I would say he's going to be a rotational piece. I don't see starter in him. I see a rotational piece in him, and he's decent. He's just got to get a better shot. He's not a consistent shooter. He's more of a driver, defensive. He rebounds well. He had 1 game where he had 15 rebounds, man. For a guard, that's like ridiculous.
That
right?
is, yep.
Oh, that's ridiculous for a guard. So he has game. It's just that he doesn't have the shooting capability. So hold on, looks like all right, it says back to the Stone Age. Yo, Cisco Kidz, ¿qué pasa? Phil Extra, the most masculine of the luchadores. All right. Then he says, one question: Guinness Mas Machista, Scotty Pippen Jr. or Kobe Brown?
I gotta go with Scotty Pippen Jr.
I agree. Thanks. Back to the Stone Age. Thanks for listening, and thanks for your questions. I really appreciate your contribution. Thanks for
I love that image.
I know. Right.
I love
All right.
it. So two more guys that I want to call out. One is I'm picking him now as my project guy.
Okay.
Cam Christie from the Clippers.
Oh yeah, you were telling me I think last segment you're saying this guy has a really good looking outside shot, right? Like kind of reminds you of like a Klay Thompson type,
yes.
Right? Like his shooting ability.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm calling him now as my project. He's going to be a guy that I'm going to be trying.
You're going to be eyeing that guy because you're like, I call this guy to be the next Klay Thompson. I want to see if I'm going to be right.
Exactly. I'm not sure he's up to snuff right now, but I like him. And then the other one that kind of stood out just because we're Warriors fans was Ryan Rollins in the Bucks game. The Bucks
game. That's right. He's playing for the Bucks now. That's right.
He kind of owned it. You know, he was out there. He was running the shop. You know, and he's a third-year player, I believe, if my math is correct. So you know, he was just looking good, and I was hoping he latches on with the Bucks there and gets some time. But yeah, I just wanted to call out those two guys. Everybody else kind of got lost in the shuffle. Nobody, Dillingham. Like I mentioned, I watched the Sixers Wolves games. He had a couple of nice assists, but he didn't really stand out much there. Yeah, I think those are, for the most part, Eddie, those are kind of the
eye test guys that you have.
Yeah, eye test guys. The guy again, Buzelis, was the one that clear and above in this round of me watching games was without a doubt. Like, dude, can the Warriors get him? Like, how do we pull this off?
Right. Oh, yeah. I know.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so as we already told to the audience that Tuan is going to be going over the eye test guys, the guys that stood out. I'm the numbers guy, right? I crunched numbers for every freaking game, for every rookie player, not every player, just the rookies of this class. And I went ahead and kind of categorized it. I went, the top 10. So I'm going to go ahead and show right now what I'm showing. Can you guys see on the screen right now?
Yeah, I can see. We're
All
good.
right. All right, so Tuan, do me a favor. There's a go to the banner and change that. Well, let me see if I change to the screen here. Oh, cool. I'm good. So can everybody see that? That's kind of small, huh? Let me go ahead and put the slideshow. Can you see it better now? There we go. I got
my old eyes can see. My old eyes.
Yeah. All right, so this is what, and unfortunately the banner is going to hide some of the. I'll go ahead and take the banner off for right now. But anyway. From a single, I went to the wrong one here. Let me go ahead and change to the right table because I had different players. Here we go. All right. Can everybody see that? All right. So these are the top 10, and this is for all of Summer League and just the drafted class. Okay. I ranked them from 1 to 10. And so what the audience can see here is these are points in one game, the best that this player had in one game throughout the entire Summer League. This is the best game for that player. And you can see here the amount of points that they accumulated. Again, the point system here is points are points. So 2 points, 3 points, 10 points is points. Then you get 1.2 points per rebound. Then you get 1.5 points for assist. Then you get 3 points for a block or a steal and minus points for turnovers, right? This is the amount that they all got here. And the guy who scored the best out of everybody for one game was Jalen Tyson at 51.4 points.
That doesn't surprise me. I told you I liked his game. He
looks good, man. And actually, I take this back because this was the best from Monday to Monday because the first weekend Reed Shepherd had the best. He had like 55.7 points, so he actually bettered Jalen Tyson.
From Monday 16th, I believe, July 16th till the end of the tournament.
Right. So but I'm only covering from July 15th to July 22nd. These are the numbers that I have up here. So you can see points per minute. That's another way to kind of look at things. You can see right here, the number 6 guy, Donovan Clingan, he had the best points per minute at 1.97 points per minute, right? So if he got the same amount of minutes.
Khalil Ware had 2.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's Khalil Ware. Yeah, you're right. I didn't see it because the two, it should have put 2.0 and I would have saw it easier. Khalil Ware had 2. So that's even better. I mean, Khalil Ware, in my opinion, we know that Josh Christopher of the Miami Heat, he's like a 3rd or 4th year player. He was the MVP for that game. But in my opinion, the MVP of the entire Summer League was Khalil Ware. without a doubt. And I'll show you why later. But what I wanted to still go through this is that Kyle Filipowski, if you look, by the way, the numbers next to the name tells you the draft position. So Jalen Tyson was the 20th pick in this year's draft, and the team that they're drafted by is also listed here as well. But if you look at this list, there's only 3 players on this entire list that are in the second round. You have Kyle Filipowski, number 32 pick, right? Yep. He was the second best at 48.7 points. Then you also had Pelle Larsson, who had he was the 44th pick at 45.8 points. Again, this is one game, the best game from the last week, right? And then you have the last guy, you have Tyler Kolek, the aforementioned Tyler Kolek. He had 39.8 points in one game, and he's the number 34th pick. But the rest of these guys are all, top 30 picks, first round picks, right? So, you have your guy, Rob Dillingham. And no wonder I lost, man. You got Rob Dillingham, right? You have Khalil Ware right here. You had Ron Holland, 3 of the top 10 on your team that were drafted,
and
man.
It just goes to show you kind of from the eye test perspective. I kept mentioning Filipowski not being that much of a step down from Clinton, Zach Edey, at least for one game, he's showing that. We'll see. I'm sure you got a chart here for best scores kind of on average through that same week. So
what I have here, so here's the next one. This is the points per game, right? So we have, this is points per minute for one game. This is not points per minute. And you already showed that, Khalil Ware had the best. He had 2 points per minute. Donovan Clayton was at 1.97 at number 2. And you can see Ron Holland, another guy that was on your team at 1.87. Jalen Tyson, he's the best guy for my team, and he's at 1.6. Again, you have Rob Dillingham. I mean, you have 3 guys on your team in the top 5. No wonder I got my butt kicked. And I'll show how much I got my butt kicked by, right? But you can see here, the other guys that didn't show up in the previous list. Again, these are points per minute, right? So sometimes these guys don't play as many minutes, but they're very productive in the time that they're playing. So the guys that stood out, AJ Mitchell, OKC Thunder, there's another guy who stood out as a points per minute guy. Pelle Larsson, that guy played really well out of Arizona. He played for Miami in the championship game, and of course, the Miami Heat are the champions of the summer league for this year. And Pelle Larsson was a big contributor to that, as well as Khalil Ware. But of course, Josh Christopher is the guy who won the MVP. Oso Ighodaro is another guy from Phoenix, and then Anton, I should say, don't call me Antoine Watson. 33 points. So these are the top points per minute in one game.
Your bottom 4 or your bottom 5 are all second rounders.
Exactly, man. Interesting, huh? Actually, the bottom 5. The bottom 5 guys are. All right. Yeah. So moving on to the next list here. So this is the best.
No Frenchies on this list so far, Eddie.
I know you're right. You're right. None of them. So it was Zachary Richarche, Alex Sarr. You had Pacam Dadiet. You had Melvin Ajinsa. And I forgot who the last guy was. There was 5 of them that were in the draft this year.
I'll know the name when I see it.
I'm just I'm going by memory here, right? If I had a list to kind of look at, I'd be able to. But I don't want to waste time.
I'm just thinking, at least the top 2 picks in the draft were Frenchies, and Frenchies anywhere right now, and anything that you're so far presenting.
Right. So anyway, so let me go ahead and show here. So these are the top Summer League rookies, highest cumulative from the statistical output from July 15th to July 22nd. Again, this is just for the week, okay? Now you can see here that, I'm going to go ahead and hide it, is that Khalil Ware, 285.9 points. And of course, it helped that he played 8 games, right? I mean, him and Pelle Larsson had 8 games. They played in 8 games. And there are a lot of other teams that were very conservative with having certain, players, their top picks only play 2 to 3 games, which happened to me with Terrence Shannon, right? But you can see here the discrepancy. He had 110 more points than the second place guy. No wonder you won. No wonder you kicked my ass, man. I can see it now, right? But you can see some of these guys here, most of the only guy here that is in the second round was Pelle Larsson, and that's because he's, played 8 games.
Filipowski too.
Oh, Filipowski, that's right. Number 2 and number 3, Filipowski and Pelle Larsson.
Which again, I mean, you look at Filipowski and he's, he played more games. So I guess in this chart, one could argue the points per game is probably the more significant stat.
Right.
Because if you look at Reed Shepherd, he's averaging 40.8 points per game, right? Given all his stats.
Which
which is pretty damn impressive. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
him. So
that's
him, Ron Holland.
that's 5 more points than Khalil Ware is doing.
Yeah, Khalil Ware 35.7. Then you also had Donovan Clingan, who's the second best as far as points per game.
Yeah.
And then you had Ron Holland at 36.1. You know, again, these guys were on your freaking team. So, but anyway, so I just wanted to kind of go over some of the stats. And for those of you that are listening or watching this, you know, I know some of you play fantasy basketball, right? We're kind of giving you a sneak peek at some of the guys that are worth drafting in your upcoming drafts for the NBA. I mean, you can kind of use this podcast to kind of guide you on some of these players that really stood out in summer league, and gives you an idea of how many the stats that they accumulate in the time that they play, which is very important in fantasy, right? So definitely look back at this to kind of get a sense as to, you know, who you should be drafting from the summer league. So,
and I do want to mention, you know, given all the hype on Bronny James over at the Lakers, has taken some of the shine off of Connect, but I think they got themselves a nice little steal there.
For sure. Dalton Connect is a good player, man. Yeah. He should not have slipped that far.
He's on your chart. You know, I think he was the 8th position on your chart, which is very, very, very impressive.
Yep. No, I agree, man. So, all right. So let's get to, you know, what happened in our little contest, right? So, you know, Twan and I get together for lunch. You know, I can't. Hold on a second. I'm having a problem here. Okay, let's see if I can get there. Okay, cool. All right, so here's what we have. This was Twan's team. Twan's team had Reed Shepherd, Rob Dillingham, Ron Holland, Tristan Da Silva, Khalil Ware. Out of all of these guys, Tristan Da Silva only played really 2 games, right? You had Khalil Ware, who played 8 games. You had Reed Shepherd, who played 3 games, but he was like uber efficient, right? Rob Dillingham, another one. Ron Holland. All these guys were just killers. I mean, no wonder. Like I said, 484.5 points. Of course, you know, this guy, Khalil Ware, got another 80, almost 80 points on his own because of the extra 2 games that he played. So you're kind of really, you know, if we kind of compare apples to apples, there's really like 400 points, you know, if we were to go with the number of games. But this is the reason why we did this. You wanted to pick players who could advance the furthest, right? And you got lucky here because, you know, the coach elected to play this guy all 8 games, and that's unusual, man. You know, I mean, that's a lot of games that this guy played.
That is.
So then you compare it. Yeah. Then you compare
it. You know, a lot of these players, you know, like Reed Shepherd's a top draft pick, but a lot of them, like Filipowski, Khalil Ware, they're lower in the first round picks, or even in Filipowski's case, early second round. Like they need more playing time, right? Because they don't get the kind of upper draft, you know, hey, I'm a lottery guy, I don't need to play every summer game type of situation. And so you gotta kind of find that sweet spot between a player that you know's got something to prove and is trying to develop, and so they're trying to get the most out of him, and the team's going to play him more than like someone like Reed Shepherd.
Right.
But, yeah.
Right. Okay, man. So we just showed Twan's team 484.5 points. Even if, like, you know, Khalil Ware only played, you know, the same amount of games as everybody else on my team, I still would have lost by 40-something points, right? But here's the team. I had Bub Carrington, and then I had Terrence Shannon, who played only 1 game in 7 minutes, right? Jalen Tyson was very, very he looked very, very good. And Dembona, some that you pointed out, he's a second-round pick, 41st pick. Isaiah Colliers also a second-round pick. And there's a reason why I did this. I kind of wanted to see if my approach, you know, didn't matter where they were drafted. You know, I looked at guys who are highly efficient in the games that they played, but unfortunately, some of these guys didn't play all games. So there's a risk anytime you do this draft. Is like, you know, like we all pointed out, Zach Edey was a risk, right? Because we knew that this guy is a lumbering big guy. And of course, he did sprain his ankle, you know, and that happened, right? And even if that did not happen, it would have been a risk to play this guy anyway, because I think they probably didn't want to like overextend this guy, you know, like they did at Khalil Ware, right? But anyway, so I got killed, 351.2 points. So Twan, I'm taking you out, man. You know, we have lunch. You tell me where you want to go, man. We can go to Peruvian. We can go to Taco Bell.
You said so. When this started, you said somewhere nice.
I know.
I think there's a steakhouse in our future for lunch.
Oh yeah, lunch. Yeah, but anyway, so you know that essentially covers our the summer league. You know what we wanted to cover here. Again, we covered the summer league last week for the first weekend, and then this week was for the second week of summer league, which is the most active one. This is where all the games really took place in these last 7 days. It was, it felt like we were watching the NBA season right now. It was great to have these games, but unfortunately, the quality of the games suffer a little bit just because, a lot of these players, they're not ready, NBA ready, right? And when we normally watch NBA games, we're seeing the best of the best competing, and it's great to watch, right? Sometimes the crappy teams in the NBA can beat a better team. But, here we have a bunch of guys that are trying to vie for, being on a team, right? They're trying to impress the GMs out there to give them a two-way contract to get on a team, right? And it happened with our Warriors. Plowden, he did well, right? He got a two-way contract because of how he did. Daquan Plowden got a two-way contract for the Warriors because of how well he played. Because the Warriors knew this guy was good. He's playing well. Someone's going to snag him, right? And that was shrewd of them to do that because somebody would have snagged them, right?
Yeah.
So this is why the summer league is fun, because you got to see some of the up and coming players. Some guys that you probably watched in college, in the tournament, or even other games just you watch on a regular weekend or weekend day. A lot of these guys came from maybe your alma maters, right? And you're pulling for them, right? So unfortunately, none of the guys came from my alma mater, Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. We don't unfortunately bring out NBA players from that school. I don't think the Cal Poly Mustangs have one NBA player. They've had football players, but not NBA players. Actually, there was one. I take that back. There was one, but I forgot who it was. But
I believe you have Mike Kruko over there for him.
Yeah, that's right. Mike Kruko, John Madden, Ozzie Smith, right? Chuck Liddell. We talked about Chuck Liddell. But anyway, man. So, but anyways, like I said, audience,
you got as many as Sarah High School has.
Oh yeah. Sarah High School. Jesus, man. I mean, that's my rival high schools. I went to St. Ignatius in San Francisco, and then you, Twan, went to Sacred Heart. We're rival high schools just because we're in the city. But then Sarah, you talk about, man, the Hall of Fame of Hall of Fames as far as players that went into playing. You got Lynn Swan. You got the Tom Brady. You got Barry Bonds. You got Greg Jeffries.
You got arguably, and people are gonna have a cow. Two of the best players the best player in baseball and the best player in football.
Barry Bonds, and the other one being Tom Brady, coming out of San Mateo High School, man, Sarah. Yep. And they just pump out players, man. There's other guys we're missing for sure, but those are the guys that are probably
Craig Lefferts, or not? Is it Craig Lefferts or no?
No, Craig Jeffries.
Craig Jeffries.
I pitched against Greg Jeffries when I was in high school.
Did you?
Yeah, I got him out. Believe it or not. But I got to tell you, man. I was a sophomore, brought up at the varsity as to pitch, and he was a senior. And man, dude, I came in there, I was sweating, man, because this guy had a reputation for just jacking people, right? So I threw him my first pitch, and I was a junk ball pitcher, man. So I went up there and threw a fork ball, and the fork ball is kind of like one that drops. It's like a slower split finger fastball, dude. He jacked it deep, like way deep, but he went foul, right? I'm like, oh, crap. So then the next one I went up there and pitched was a slider, and the slider is like a fast cutting kind of a side to side kind of a pitch, and he jacked that one deep too, but it went foul.
So you got 2 strikes. That's the way I
man. I'm like, oh shit, I got 2 strikes. So then when I threw it, the guy called for, like, I think it was a knuckleball. I threw a knuckleball. Dude, I mean, right there, I was like throwing a bunch of junk. I was a junk ball pitcher. Anyway, I threw a knuckleball, dude, ground ball to first base, and I got him out. So my one and only time I faced him, I got him out, man. So I can say that I got a Major League Baseball player out in high school. So
there you go. You go.
Nice. All right. Well, hey, audience, thanks for listening again. We're going to be here every 2 weeks starting today on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. We may have a special guest on the next show who's going to be talking about WNBA. It's a lady friend of mine that I have who's married to another buddy of mine, and she could have played it in WNBA, man, and she's a really good ball player. But she has 2 kids, and 2 of them they might join this podcast too. They follow the WNBA as well. But these 2 kids are ballers for their age. One of them's already dunking. He's in 8th grade, man. All right, so this gives you an idea of like how much of a baller this family is. But anyway, this person might join us for the next one to talk about WNBA. But anyway, this is Buzzer Beaters. From grumblingsmedia.com. You can find us on Pandora, Spotify, YouTube, X, Facebook, any of these places where you can find your normal outlets, your podcast outlets. But we appreciate you listening in, and by all means, tune in next week. Give us some questions. But again, this is for Anthony Twan Corral, and myself, Eddie Aparicio. This is Buzzer Beaters signing off.
Hey everybody, this is Big John from Grumblings Media, and I just want to say thank you for watching our content. If you want to support our efforts here at Grumblings Media, just smash the subscribe button right here, totally free, or just go ahead and consume more of our great content. Click either one of these two boxes.